Jonesy and Amanda.
Jam Nation.
40 years ago, Bob Geldof hit the stage for one of the largest live shows the world had ever seen. And his empathetic heart changed the world. He's coming down under to share stories from his extraordinary life through an evening with Bob Geldof. We've managed to catch him in the morning. Yeah. So, Bob, hello.
Here he is.
It's pretty extraordinary to catch me in the morning.
You're doing well.
Quincy Jones passed away yesterday.
Yep.
And the story, I was just watching The Greatest Night in Pop History.
Yep.
And when Quincy introduced you to explain to all those artists, that must have been so surreal. Michael Jackson, Huey Lewis, Cyndi Lauper, Bruce Springsteen, all in that room, and you had to get their attention to do the song.
I mean, they were the least intimidating. Let's go through the list. Ray Charles, Smokey Robinson, I Got Sunshine. Yeah, Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, Willie Nelson. So I'm this doofus from Ireland who's pitched up because Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie and Harry Belafonte asked me to come, because we'd done Band-Aid, and this was going to be the American version. And it's one thing being in a room with, kids like Boy George and George Michael, and they were the generation kind of after me. It's another walking into a room which is your entire culture, our entire culture, in front of you. And Quincy was sort of like the headmaster. Everyone did what Quincy said because he was clearly a genius anyway. But he stood there at his rostrum. He had a sort of rostrum there like a schoolmaster. And he banged his baton like his conductor. And everyone please pay attention. Come on. And they're standing there on these steps like school choir. These this masked talent. And he says, right, everybody pay attention. Dylan, please. Stop, So he's doing this, and he says, right, you all know Bob Geldof. No, nobody knew Bob Geldof. So, like he says, Bob's here to tell you what it's all about, why we're here, etc. So I had to kind of go into my thing, and it was daunting. I haven't seen that film because
great.
I don't like watching sort of anything with me in it. But
you convinced them. You've got 2 minutes, and you convinced them.
They were on a high because they'd come out of very, very cleverly. They'd arranged it around the American Music Awards, so they were all going to be there. And after these shows, there's not much to do. There's a pretty useless party or something. So Quincy, and if Quincy summons them, he'd produced everything, and he'd just come off of Thriller and all those records. They'd come. And so that was it. That's how he got them all there. And my job was to sort of take them down from the party high almost. And I'd just come from Africa. I'd just been trawling through the horror. And it was to somehow, if I could, in my sort of fandom, if I could get through that, to translate what I'd just seen and to inform them that's what they were there for, to give meaning to that evening.
I love the idea of sliding doors in people's lives. You walk past your television in 1984 and you see a news story about civil war in Ethiopia and the millions that are dying from starvation.
Yeah.
You watching that story, being galvanised by it, changed Africa, changed you. Do you ever think of the sliding doors and the what if you hadn't seen that story? So many things would be so different.
Yeah, I didn't change Africa, but thank you for the suggestion. Certainly what happened was there are, and this is weird, and it sounds immodest to say it because it's not down to me anyway. There are hundreds of thousands and probably millions alive today because of watching that, coming home early and seeing the news that night. In fact, I've just come from Montreal, where there's a play about all of this called Just for One Day, which is in the West End, and it's huge, and it's opening in Montreal. It's opening in Canada in January, and Band-Aid get 10% because we still do it every day. It gets 10% of the money, so I was there to plug that, and I was ordering breakfast in the room because I didn't have to get up early to do early morning bloody radio. And
Good for you.
and the phone came through, and my wife answered, and he says, "Do you mind if I come up and give you your breakfast? It's not my job. I'm one of the managers." And my wife said, "Yeah, says, "I'd just like to meet Bob if I can." And she said, "Yeah, come up." Anyway, this guy came up, suited, small guy. He had been in those fields of horror, as I said, and his parents had died, and he had no idea where he came from. But he had his sister who was 4, and so the two of them were together, and they, because of that record and that concert, they were kept alive and brought up in the orphanages that were built and stuff like that. So he came up, and he was there, and I was, in my undies and T-shirt and groggy and just wanting my coffee. And he came over and he said, "Can I give you a hug?" And he just said, "Thank you very much for my life."
Wow. And with your your show that you're doing, so this is pretty much it. Do you have a plan? Do you get up on stage, or
look? There's so many.
Obviously,
stories.
You're on stage.
There's so many stories. Yeah, I mean, next year, as I said, is full on. It's the Rats 50th, so tours, the big festivals. It's Live Aid, so the BBC are doing 3 1 hours, then showing the concert. CNN are doing 4 45 minutes showing the concert. There's stuff happening in Australia, but I need to park off. I need to distance myself somewhat, even though it's every single day of the week. So someone suggested, stop telling us the stories in the pub. Why don't you go out and tell them, because they're not known. And there's so many there's so much film, there's so many pictures, there's so many stories, and the only way I can do that is by playing tunes around the story. So I'll play some of the song you just played there in the background, and all those other ones, but plus other songs that relate to the events of that life, which I saw when I came here was something, these stories of an extraordinary life or something. Again, it sounds immodest, but it's true. I haven't a clue what's going on. I don't know what the hell happened to me. I really don't. So I've called it Life WTF. That's what I've changed it to. It's a bit like your call sign, WSF.
But it's true. Your life is, it's almost like a Forrest Gump existence.
It is.
In the world. Like when you look, and you should watch that one night in pop night.
I can't stand it.
I know, but you just watch it, and how that actually happened. How does stuff happen?
It's like, sorry, I got this thing. You're all drinking water.
Would you like a sip from our giant water bottles?
They've got their hydropower tin cans. It's weird. I mean, the weirdest thing I think was things were never great. When I was growing up, mother died at 7. Dad sold towels around the countryside of rural Ireland in the 50s and 60s. So he left on Monday, came back on Friday, no money. So me and my sisters were kind of left to our own devices. I didn't think it was crap then. It's only retrospectively I feel sad for that kid, but I didn't then. I was just getting on with it. But those things tend to make you organise yourself and independence and very dogmatic in your points of view. And rock and roll was beginning to really happen, with the Beatles and stuff like that. So we didn't have money, so we didn't have a telly or a fridge or a phone of that. So the only thing we had was a radio. No one at home to make me do homework. I read the books from the school library, went into school, didn't understand why they were allowed to beat me, as there was no authority at home. I never grew up with that understanding of the parameters within which you must live your life. And then I bumped into the police, and that wasn't good. And, so all the time is this authority thing. And the only way out, really, inevitably, retrospectively, was going to be music. And then what do you do with that? So fame is a currency. It's like any type of currency. How do you spend it? And we came in the punk period, the Rats. We wanted change. All the songs were about that. So when I saw something that was put any problem I had into a towering, pathetic perspective, then luckily I could write tunes. I was in a band. I had mates in rock and roll, and this required something of the self rather than putting a quid in the Oxfam bucket or something. I could write a tune. is guaranteed to be a hit if the stars of the moment do it. So one thing followed the other. One night then, that becomes a phenomenon. Millions are raised. I thought we'd get 100,000. One night, Harry Belafonte and Michael Jackson called me. That's not normal.
No.
And Harry Belafonte, for those who don't remember him, was a hero to me. He was this beautiful black man, the first black guy to have a networked American television show. They didn't notice he was black because he was so pretty, like Muhammad Ali, really. And he also took slave songs from the islands, come Mr. Tallyman, and put them number one at the charts, but nobody knew they were slave songs. He was a Marxist. And he backed this young preacher, Martin Luther King, when Martin Luther King was a kid. He took Frank Sinatra to the southern states to say, this is why there aren't black people in your audience. And Frank wouldn't play anymore if there weren't black people. Wow. This guy was a dude. And so when Harry Belafonte calls me, he goes, is that Bob Geldof? And I say, yeah. And he goes, we're fucking embarrassed by what you Brit kids did. I said, I'm Irish, Harry. Same thing. So much for Marxist dialectic, So, and then he goes, I got Michael here. Hi, Bob.
So Michael was there, Harry Belafonte, and they're both on the same phone call.
So I'm going to Paula, my missy. I'm going, she's sort of jumping up and down. And she says, come over, we're going to do your thing. Come over and, help us. So I did. And then it was logical, put these two things together. The Canadians did theirs. Bryan Adams wrote a tune, and Neil Young and Joni Mitchell showed up in a taxi and did it. The French did their thing, Chanson sans frontières. The Germans, Mention for Mention. The Dutch. So I just thought, bang them all together and make a concert. There must be enough satellites. There has to be, and to speak to everyone. And so one thing follows the other. But the biggest... what did you call a passing window?
The sliding doors.
The biggest one. I talked to my mate who's here with me. I'd come back. I was thrown out of Canada. I was an illegal, and I was working on the underground newspaper there and become a bit of a smart arse, My name was getting around by things. And the Mounties got their man and threw me out. So I went back to Ireland. I was going to apply for full citizenship, because I loved in Vancouver. And one day... I was so bored, it wasn't happening. Spring evening, I decided I'd go to the pub. Now, I never went to the pub in Ireland. I just didn't like pub life. People talked up at night, and then it was closing time, the ideas evaporated. There was nowhere to go anyway. It was zero economy. So I decided I'd walk, just a lovely spring evening, I'd walk along the rail cuttings to the village beside where I lived in Dunleary, South Dublin, called Glasthule. And I went to a pub I wouldn't anyway normally go to. And I walked in, and there were two guys from down the road, and they were talking about starting a band with an acoustic guitar and an upright piano. I was just saying, if I'd been 5 minutes later, I'd have walked in, been by myself, had a pint, gone home. If I decided not to go to that unusual pub in that unusual town, any decision that was slightly left or right of that, then you don't get the band, you don't get the hits, you don't get the stadiums, you don't get the Live Aid, you don't get this.
Scary,
and you don't get a lot of people alive. That's the weirdest thing, And I woke up this morning again to 11, 10 emails describing the new horrors in the Sudan. I mean, we're all stuck with Ukraine and Palestine, but what's going on there is unbelievable. So you described it already in talking about Ethiopia in 84, but over there it's grim. So Band Aid goes on, and we do it every day, and I do the music every day, and then I just need a break. I need to sort of almost download it and see it in context. So that's why I'll be pitching up here in March and April.
Well, you got to take a breather. That's what it is. Bob, we could talk to you all day. We'll give you a horse for our Melbourne Cup. Can we do that? Are you...
I'm going.
You're going?
I'm off there now.
So we've got a horse for Sir Bob.
What are we going to do? We're going to give you the map. What's the map like? That's from our sweep.
Well, it's paying $51 and likes Flemington, but I just don't think he's going well enough this preparation.
Preparation.
I don't know. That's what the paper's saying.
That's what the punters are saying.
Go and give that horse a talking to.
Okay, so we used to have this Spanish teacher, priest, and he'd come in every day to Spanish class, and I'd say, Geldof, get up and do your declensions. And I'd say, mi corazón. He'd say, what? Mi corazón, father. What's wrong with your voice? Nothing. He goes, why are you saying Corazon. But they say Corazon in Spain, Father. We're not in Spain, Geldof. We're in Ireland. And then on Wednesdays he'd say, sit down, open your copybooks. We'd open our says, now take it down. The 3 o'clock at Doncaster, looking good, 5-1, so and so. And he'd give us tips. And on Friday we'd have to report whether we'd won or not, like on the thing. So that was the education I received, guys,
It's done you all right.
It's been an education for us. Tickets to see Sir Bob Geldof go on sale Thursday at tegdainty.com. Sir Bob, thank you for joining
You're
us.
welcome. Thanks, guys. Pleasure.